What is up, guys? It is Capital Coasters here, and welcome back to another video. And this is definitely a long-awaited video. This is my top 25 favorite roller coasters that I have ridden. Now, I've been wanting to make this video ever since I got my last credit of 2019. That was at Six Flags Great Adventure about a month ago. So I've definitely been wanting to make this video quite a bit, and today I'm finally coming out with it. Now, I will say, first off, this list is probably going to be pretty controversial for some of you guys, so I'll ask that you respect my opinion, and I'll respect yours. But yeah, let's just get right into the list. Alright, so coming in at number 25 is going to be MANTA at SeaWorld Orlando. This is definitely my favorite flying coaster that I've ridden. It's definitely a really just fun coaster. It's got a really solid first drop, a really intense pretzel loop, some fun inversions, some pretty intense turns, especially love the one that goes right near the entrance. You have that awesome water effect. It's a pretty long ride. It's really smooth. It's not the most intense ride overall, but it's definitely really graceful, really fun, and it's definitely my favorite coaster at SeaWorld Orlando. Alright, so coming in at the number 24 spot is going to be KINGDA at Six Flags Great Adventure, the world's tallest coaster, and this ride is really fun. It is extremely intense. The launch is really fun. It's not the best. It does kind of feel like it's tugging you instead of just pushing you on the launch, but it's definitely pretty fun. Of course, you get some really good intensity going up the top hat and coming down it. It doesn't really give any airtime, but it's overall really intense, really fast, and it's just such an iconic coaster, and it's definitely one of the better coasters at Six Flags Great Adventure. Alright, so coming out at the number 23 spot is going to be another Intimate Accelerator, Storm Runner at Hersheypark, and it's pretty close with KINGDA. However, I just felt that the overall experience, if you're not sitting in the front row, is better on Storm Runner. It was just a bit smoother. It's definitely a great coaster. It's got a really fun launch, a really fun top hat with a great vertical drop. The inversions are really fun and wacky. It's a great hang time. That flying snake dive gets a great whip. It's got some really good airtime moments. It's definitely short, but it's just a really good burst of adrenaline. Alright, so coming out the number 22 spot is going to be Incredible Hulk at Universal's Islands of Adventure. This is definitely a great launched B&M coaster. The launch is actually pretty fun and underrated. The Zero Giro is the best one I've ever ridden. It throws you so hard. It's actually a really intense ride. It's got some great inversions. It's even got a cool tunnel. I actually grayed out on this ride. It's really intense. It's a pretty long ride. It's got some good theming. It's really smooth, and it's just a really fun coaster overall. And it's definitely my favorite coaster in Orlando. Alright, so coming in at number 21 might actually be a shocker for a lot of you guys. This is going to be Green Lantern at Six Flags Great Adventure. And I love stand-up coasters. This ride is so incredibly intense. It is the second most intense B&M I've ever ridden. And I think that has to do with the fact that it's a stand-up, just makes it more intense. It actually hurts your feet because of how intense it is. It's a really fun ride. It's got a pretty fun first drop. The inversions are good. The vertical dive loop, incline loop, and corkscrews are good. You even get a good airtime moment, some intense turns. It's really long, really smooth. I love the color scheme, and it's just a really great coaster overall. Alright, so coming out at the number 20 spot is going to be Thunderhead at Dollywood, and this is such a great GCI. I think it's very overhated. It's got some really strong airtime moments. It's actually really smooth. It's got some great lateral, some good transitions. It's got an awesome station flyby, great first drop. Just really fun bank turns overall. It's got like sideways and like slanted sort of airtime moments. It's got regular airtime moments. It's got more sustained moments of airtime, quick pops of airtime. It's a pretty long ride. I love the terrain usage, and it's definitely my favorite GCI. Alright, so coming in at the number 19 spot is one of, if not the most iconic coasters in the entire world. This is Millennium Force at Cedar Point, and this is the weakest Giga coaster I've ridden, but it's still pretty fun. It's got a really fun first drop right next to Lake Erie. Just love the setting of this ride. The overbanks give some decent intensity. The airtime is really good. You get floater and ejector. The low to the ground turns in the tunnels are really cool, and give a great sensation of speed. And just you get a great sensation of speed throughout this whole ride. Flies through the layout. It's a really long coaster, really smooth. It's not the most intense, but it does get some decent force on some of those turns. And the night ride is definitely really good with this coaster. Alright, so coming in at the number 18 spot is going to be another coaster from Cedar Point. This is MAGNUM XL200. This was the first ever hypercoaster, and it's definitely one of the best ones out there. It's got a really great first drop. It's got some really good floater airtime and ejector. The first hill gives some nice floater, the second hill gives some nice sustained ejector, and then the return run just gets some crazy strong ejector. It does have some intense moments like that turnaround. It is a bit rough on parts where you're banking, like the turnaround and the drop off the first airtime hill, but it's honestly not that bad. So I will say, give yourself some room on this ride, because if you do get stapled, it will kind of suck. But if you do have room, this is just a great coaster, and it's got a great setting. Right, so coming in at the number 17 spot is going to be another hyper coaster, and this is Superman the Ride at Six Flags New England. And this is just a really fun coaster. It's definitely, from what I've heard, not as good as its original incarnation, but it's still a really fun coaster. It's got a fun first drop. It's got lots of really great airtime moments. All ejector, all really strong. The It Happens hill is so good, especially in the front. That's definitely the best moment of the ride. But the other hills give great airtime. You have the first half, which gives kind of your more typical airtime moments, and the second hill gives kind of these twisted airtime hills, along with some intense helices and an awesome tunnel dive. It's also got a pretty intense overbank turn in the first half of the ride. It's a really long coaster, really fast paced, fairly smooth, and honestly the restraints aren't that bad. And it's just a really fun coaster. Alright, so coming in at the number 16 spot is going to be Top Thrill Dragster at Cedar Point. This is definitely my favorite Intimate Accelerator and my favorite Strata that I've ridden. This coaster is just so good. It's so intense. The launch is crazy. Unlike KINGDA, it felt a lot more natural. It felt more like a push instead of just a tug. And it's just such an intense and fast acceleration and great sensation of speed on that launch. It's a really long-lasting launch. You get some great intensity going up and coming down the tower, just like on KINGDA, and you actually do get some good airtime at the top, unlike KINGDA, because it doesn't have the trims. You get some great laterals on that drop. It is extremely short, but it is just so intense, and it's such a good burst of adrenaline. I love the theme, and it's just such a great coaster. Definitely one of the best coasters at Cedar Point. Alright, so coming in at number 15 is definitely going to be a controversial one, and this is the Batman the Ride clones at Six Flags parks, and there are some at some other parks. These are just such underrated clones. I think people hate them just because they're clones, but they're really great. The first drops are actually really fun, really good for how small they are. The vertical loops are so intense and tight. The zero gyro is really whippy. The corkscrews are really intense. The helices and turns are just really intense and tight. It is a fairly short ride, but these are really smooth, or at least the two that I've ridden. The one at Six Flags Great Adventure and the one at Over Georgia, and they're just super intense rides and just some great B&M inverts. Alright, so coming out the number 14 spot is going to be Raptor at Cedar Point, and this is just a great B&M invert. I love how it runs along the Cedar Point midway. It's very iconic. It's got a great unique first drop, which is really fun. It's got some really intense and tight inversions like the vertical loop, which is great. The zero gyro is really intense and whippy, so is the Cobra roll. Which is definitely one of the best Cobra rolls I've ridden. It's actually really smooth. The corkscrews are really intense and whippy, very smooth. The helices are really intense. There's even a good airtime moment towards the end of the ride. The mid-course brake run does slightly kill it, but it's honestly not that bad. And apparently they do sometimes run it without the mid-course on, which is cool. Really, my only complaint with this ride is the transition into the final brake run does kind of slam you, but if you brace yourself, it isn't as bad. So I'd say it's a near perfect ride, and I just love Raptor. Alright, so coming in at number 13 is going to be Maverick, also at Cedar Point, and this is just a great intimate blitz coaster. It's got really almost everything you could want in a coaster. It's got an awesome beyond vertical drop. It's got two launches, although the first is just kind of an LSM lift hill, but the second launch is really cool in that tunnel. It's got some really intense whippy bank turns. She has some great laterals. It's got some fun inversions with some good hang time. It's got some really strong airtime moments. It's got some really intense stangle dives. It's really long, really smooth. It's just a really great coaster overall. Alright, so coming in at the number 12 spot is going to be Goliath at Six Flags Over Georgia. This is definitely my favorite B&M hyper by far. I think it could be the best one out there. Even better than Shambhala. It's just really fun. The drop is not the best. It's kind of short, but it's not the end of the world. But this ride's actually really intense. It's got some really intense bank turns. The helix is so intense. I actually grade out on it. Most people do, from what I've heard. The floater airtime is super sustained and awesome. And the ejector hills at the end of the ride give by far the strongest airtime I've ever gotten on a B&M. Those triple camelbacks are great. And just not having mid-course, which I definitely think improves it. And it's really smooth. It's just a really great ride overall. And it's definitely a really solid B&M. Alright, so coming in at number 11 is going to be Fury 325 at CAROWINDS. Now, don't kill me on this one. I definitely like this coaster. It's a lot of fun. I just think it is a bit overrated. Although it is solid. The drop is decent, but not great. But it is really long. You got some pretty fun, intense bank turns, which are really fast and give some good laterals. Those back-to-back bank turns in the first half. The treble clef is actually really fun. That sideways airtime moment and then diving under the entrance. It's a pretty forceful moment. It's definitely my favorite part of the ride. Although you do have that turn after it, which really slows it down. The pacing is not good with this ride. Although the airtime hills at the end are pretty good. Although it does have that helix, which slows it down. So yeah, I think the pacing is kind of what brings it down. I think if it hauled throughout the whole ride, it could be a little bit better. So it's so solid, it's just not the best, and I do think it's kind of overrated, but it's still a solid Giga Coaster and a solid B&M. Alright, so coming at the number 10 spot is AFTERBURN, and yes, this is my favorite coaster at CAROWINDS. I do prefer it to Fury. I don't know, I just thought this ride was more intense and more consistent. I definitely like intense rides a lot, so I think that's why I like this ride more. It is super intense. The drop is alright, but the vertical loop is great. The Immelman's solid. The Zero G roll is actually really, really good. The Batwing is super intense. Actually, surprisingly, I think it's more intense than MONTU's Batwing. The corkscrew is really good. The final helix is crazy. Even that airtime hill gives a nice bit of floater airtime. And a nice foot chopper. So it is kind of short, but it's overall extremely intense, extremely smooth. And yes, it is my favorite coaster at CAROWINDS. Alright, so coming in at the number 9 spot is going to be Twisted Cyclone at Six Flags Over Georgia. And this is my lowest ranked RMC, but it's still a great coaster. It's got some really, really, really strong airtime moments. A great wave turn, which gives some great sustained sideways ejector air, and just all the pops of airtime are really strong. It's got an awesome first drop. Some good hang time filled inversions, some decent laterals. It's not the most intense, it is kind of short, but it's definitely a really fun ride, and it also has some great head choppers too. Alright, so coming at the number 8 spot is going to be my favorite B&M invert, MONTU. This ride is really fun. It's actually not the most intense invert. I thought that like Raptor and Afterburn honestly were a bit more intense. It's kind of let down with that, but I think what makes this the best is just how it's a really long ride. It has 7 inversions and it works in some really cool trenches. The inversions are really fun. Like, it's got a good vertical loop, Immelman, Zero G roll, Batwing, a second vertical loop, and a corkscrew. It's basically the same inversions as Afterburn, except it adds in one more vertical loop right after the mid-course brake run. You actually do get a little bit of airtime going to that mid-course, so it's definitely got some fairly forceful inversions, some good whippy moments like the Zero G roll. The Batwing's really fun. The corkscrew's a bit rough, but it's honestly not the end of the world. But I really like the theming. I really like the trenches. It's got a really fun first drop. It's fairly smooth. Got a lot of inversions. It's a long ride, and it's just a really fun coaster. Alright, so coming in at the number 7 spot is going to be Twisted Timbers at King's Dominion, and this was my first RMC. This is a really fun coaster. It's got a bunch of airtime moments. So what I think it really specializes in is the airtime. It throws you out of your seat throughout this whole ride. There's just so many great moments of airtime. You have the speed hills, which are fun. The triple camelbacks, there's some great, powerful ejector air, and when you get a back row night ride, you get standing airtime if you have room. It's just crazy. The church track double up gives some nice airtime, and just some pops overall throughout the rest of the ride gives some great airtime. It's got a really awesome outer bank turn, a really fun or solid overbank, and some great inversions, including that awesome barrel drop, a Zero G roll, and a cut back, which give great hang time, and the drop gives great whip. So it's overall a really fun coaster. It's really smooth, really long. It's got a good theme. It's just a really great coaster overall. Alright, so just edging out Twisted Timbers is going to be Wicked Cyclone at Six Flags New England. And I think what makes this better than Twisted Timbers is that I think it just had a better variety of elements. While Twisted Timbers focused a lot more on airtime, and this ride definitely focuses on airtime as well. It just has more types of like other elements. it has more of an emphasis on like overbanks and inversions and strong laterals, and it has a lot of really good bank turns and has several outer banks, and there's like this crazy element before the final inversion, which gets some great laterals. The airtime is great too. There's a lot of great strong pops of it. You get great airtime on those outer banks on the first drop, which is a really great drop. That first airtime hill is really fun. The double down's good. There's a pretty strong sustained moment right after the double down. There's a lot of pops throughout the ride, which are a lot of fun. The first overbank's pretty good. That you get great hang time on the inversions. I especially love the 0G stall. There's so many head choppers on this ride. A lot of this ride takes place inside the structure. It's so compact. It's a pretty long ride. It's just so much fun. I think my only complaint with it is the nylon wheels do cause a bit of pacing issues, but other than that, it's pretty much a perfect ride. Alright, so coming at the number 5 spot is going to be KUMBA at Busch Gardens Tampa, and yes, this is my favorite B&M coaster I've ridden. It is also the most intense B&M I've ridden. This coaster is just absolutely incredible. It's got some extremely forceful inversions. It's got an incredibly good 0G roll, and a great Cobra roll. The corkscrews are great. The vertical loop gets some great hang time. The dive loop is solid. The drop is okay, but not the best. I actually like how the vertical loop goes around the lift, so I think that's very unique. It keeps it very fast paced throughout the ride. It really doesn't have any dead spots, which I think is what makes it so good. It slides right through that mid-course. That mid-course does not slow it down really much at all. So the whole ride's good. The end helix is just absolutely insane. It's butter smooth, and it's just such a good coaster. Definitely the best coaster in Florida, and by far my favorite B&M. And coming in at the number 4 spot is going to be Steel Avengers at Cedar Point. Now, please don't kill me on this one. Don't get me wrong, I love this coaster. It's definitely my favorite RMC. There's a lot good to it. It has, first of all, the most airtime in the world. This ride is constantly throwing you out of your seat. It's got some great inversions. It's got some good bank turns, some great moments of laterals. The drop is awesome. The top hat's great. The outer bank turn's really fun. It's just got a lot of great elements. However, I just thought it was a bit overrated. When the mid-course brake run is running on, which it was for all of my rides, I definitely noticed the second half was quite a bit weaker. It's actually mostly floater instead of ejector, which was kind of disappointing. It didn't throw me out of my seat as hard, but it was still pretty fun. It just wasn't the best. It wasn't that crazy, that second half. But it's still got a lot of great elements in that second half. It's got a wave turn. I think the outer bank turn into the structure isn't the most, or it doesn't have the best airtime, but it's overall actually a pretty cool element. The ending is a bit overrated, but it's still really fun. It's got a great wave turn. It's really, definitely has a lot of elements, a lot of head choppers diving in and out of the structure. Is really fun, but I just thought that the first half was better because the airtime was stronger, especially that double up into the mid-course is really good. Just definitely fun coasters, just the airtime was a bit weak when the mid-course is running on, which it usually does. So take it as you will, but Steel Vengeance is coming in at my number 4 spot, but it still makes my top 5, so it's still a very fun coaster. Alright, so coming in at the number 3 spot is going to be SKYRUSH at Hersheypark, and this is definitely my favorite hypercoaster. This coaster is super intense. It's got some really solid positive Gs, even though I don't think that's really what it focuses on, but it has some incredibly strong airtime. This ride hits -2 Gs, which is insane. It's got that insane double down like drop. The sustained ejector hills are great. The final airtime hill is definitely, I'd say, the strongest moment on this ride, other than maybe the first drop. That moment is surprisingly crazy. The airtime is so strong that it hurts. It has some fairly forceful turns and some great laterals too. The Stangle Dive and the Twisted Hill are really good. It does have kind of a rattle, but it's honestly not that bad. It is kind of short. It definitely keeps a fairly good pace throughout the ride. It does kind of slow down towards the end, but it's got a really good layout, and I really love the train design. And coming in at the number 2 spot is going to be ElToro at Six Flags Great Adventure. This coaster is absolutely incredible. This was actually my number 1 coaster when I first rode it in June 2016, all the way until August of 2018 when I rode Steel Vengeance. It has shifted around quite a bit, but now it's at number 2. And don't get me wrong, this is so incredibly close with the number 1 that is constantly changing. It's just, I guess it's my number 2 as of right now. There's just so much love with this coaster. The airtime is so strong. Those first 2 hills are so sustained and amazing. The drop is absolutely incredible. My second favorite drop I've experienced behind SKYRUSH's drop. The Rolling Thunder hill is incredibly strong. The turnaround's really intense. The switchbacks at the end are crazy. Give really strong laterals, especially crazy to have those on a wooden coaster. And in a lap bar, you definitely get thrown around quite a bit. The middle section is a bit weaker, but it's still pretty good. Does give some soft floater and some great head choppers. This ride is just so intense. It's just such an incredible coaster, and it's by far the best wooden coaster I've ever ridden. And of course, coming in at the number 1 spot is going to be Intimidator 305 at King's Dominion. And even after riding this coaster countless times, it still just blows my mind every time. This thing is just so intense. It truly lives up to the hype that first turn. I black out pretty much almost every time on it. Either that or I gray out. It's just crazy. The low to the ground turns are so fast and intense. The back rapid fire turns are extremely whippy. The drop is great. There's some great airtime moments. Keeps such a fast pace throughout this ride. Actually, on most of my rides this year, they seem to have been running their trims a lot lighter, so it definitely kept a better pace through this ride. It is just so good. The back row experience is so intense. This might be a bit of an unpopular opinion, but for me, I-305 is a bit more of a back row ride. It's found as more intense. The front row is still incredible, though. It is just the most intense coaster I've ever ridden. It is so fast-paced. This thing flies through its layout. It's just so incredible. It's definitely the best coaster I've ridden, and I just love it so much. Alright, so that'll be about it for this list. As of right now, I've ridden 116 coasters, and this is my top 25, so it's definitely hard to decide, I guess, which ones are the best, and just ranking them can get difficult, but this is just my opinion. You guys can feel free to disagree, but this is just me. And this is me riding Lightning Round at Dollywood because it was closed when I went, but I will hopefully be returning next spring to finally ride that thing. It just looks amazing. But yeah, that's my top 25 coasters. I hope you guys enjoyed this list. Sorry if it was a bit of a lengthier video. I just found I had a lot to talk about. But yeah, that'll pretty much be about it for this video. My top 25 coasters ridden as of fall 2019. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.